Welcome to Her Life Unscripted podcast, inspiring burnt out, stressed out, and stretched thin women to embrace the unscriptedness of life. Hosted by Anna Osborne.
Hello, lovelies, and welcome to Her Life Unscripted, episode 42. I am your host, Anna Osborne, and I am really happy to be here with all of you today. It is, I feel like I have to kind of take a breath from it all in order to center and be here with you guys today because there's a lot swirling on around us outside. And I think that is something that is really just shifting my energy. And so in thinking about today's show, there was lots of thoughts that went into it and lots of kind of preparation of wanting to make sure that it was a show and an episode that I could stand behind and also feel like grounded by it, feeling like I'm coming to a grounding place. So I'm excited to be here with all of you today and be able to dive in. As you know, the way that we run the show is that each month we have a theme that we follow. And I say we because this really is our show. I feel like such a part of this process is this collective voice that we are creating, not only with the guests that I interview, but those of you listening and downloading the podcast and sending in your feedback. And even those of you that don't send in feedback, but are just listening, this is all part of our collective voice. And I really want to encourage you guys to be able to reach out and add your voice to the mix. Your voice is a powerful thing. And the more that we are hearing and sharing them, the stronger not only our voice becomes, but the power of the podcast and the message it's sending to really connect with women of all different walks of life, but women who are living and breathing mothers, sisters, daughters, aunts, cousins, friends, all of those things that are having an experience of what it's like to be a woman from their angle and really adding to that collective voice to make our following stronger, our movement stronger, our energy stronger. So that is why I use the word we when I talk about the podcast. So as you know, we have a monthly theme that we kind of connect to kind of create a thread that connects all of the episodes together. And last month in January, we really spoke about this idea of wellness and balance being BS and stepping away from this model of that we need to achieve balance and have balance in our lives in order to be in a grounded place, but really moving to this idea of whole body wellness, mind, body, soul, spirit, and recognizing that it's something that's in constant flux, constant movement, and that actually is an amazing expectation rather than feeling like it's got to be balanced at all times and really what that brings for us. So that was January. And honestly, February, initially, I kind of had this idea of what the shows were going to look like. And then the world's kind of blown up, right? Like what's going on around us is so relevant. And I've spent time talking with other podcasters and friends about how they're handling this giant shift in the world and really what they're doing with it in order to be able to be relevant to what's going on and also not sweep it under the rug. So that's really where I've kind of wrestled around with where to center our theme for the month. And honestly, what I've decided to do is to stick with the theme. And really, honestly, what's so crazy is that this month's theme actually falls in line perfectly with what's going on in the world. So the synchronicity of it is something that I'm going to choose to follow. And so our month of February is all about inspiration from movies, kind of movie-inspired podcast episodes. But what's really crazy is that although they are inspired by movies, they're also relevant to what's happening right now in our lives. And so today, our episode is inspired by the movie Moana. And before those of you who out there who think this is crazy, how could you talk about the movie Moana? First of all, given what's going on in our world. And second of all, it's a children's movie. So I want you to bear with me for a moment and give me a second to kind of show you what stood out for me and why I feel like it's so relevant to what's going on. Because right now, politically, socially, all those sorts of things, it's really crazy. And it's honestly, like I said, there was a big part of me that wanted to just kind of go on business as usual. And I kind of wanted to because it seemed like it was the easier thing to do, right? The show is not a political show. And it's not one where I've ever kind of shared my political views, my agendas, etc. But then I realized that by going on business as usual and not tying into what's going on to the world around us, I was really letting my fear kind of hold me back, right? Because being able to be silent about what's going on around me, when I see so many people affected by it, including myself, realize that that's just the fear talking. And the reason it's the fear talking is because I grew up in a family that didn't talk politics at all. Like, we just didn't talk politics. And it wasn't because we thought politics were bad or, we didn't believe in politics or anything like that. It was just that it kind of wasn't polite conversation, right? Like, you think about those things you hear, like, you don't talk politics, money, or religion with friends, and you'll have nice, peaceful, harmonious friendships. And that was kind of the house that I grew up in. There was those occasional kind of under the breath comments by one of my parents about, whoever was seated in the presidential chair and whether or not they, thought they were doing something good or screwing something up based on my parents' opinion. But for the most part, politics weren't discussed. And, as a kid, my parents' political views were very, very different. And I think that at some point in their voting history, they voted just to cancel out each other's votes. Kind of jokingly, they say that. And over time, they've met much more in the middle, but that's been the evolution for them, right? But what I saw as a kid is that if you talked politics, fights were going to break out. People's feelings were going to get hurt. Differing opinions meant that something kind of like a chaos was going to happen. And so for me, I never got used to that conversation around politics. And even now, I think, especially now that, opening up your news feed, your social media, your CNN, your NPR, wherever you get your news, right? That when I read or see or hear things from others who are speaking their minds openly and very passionately, there's a part of me that starts to get nervous. And it's a very childlike place, right? It's just like, I'm not really sure what I'm nervous about, but I also know that my anxiety is rising, right? Like, is there going to be a fight that's going to break out? Somebody's going to get their feelings hurt. It's going to get ugly. Like, I'm not quite sure what's spurring that anxiety, but I know for a fact that it comes from this place of politics not being talked about in my home. And really being kind of this off limits topic of let's just not go there because we do differ our opinions so much. And now, in this stage of my life, that I can have those conversations with my parents and realizing that we're much more of the common thread than, maybe I thought growing up. So with that being said, that I realized that talking about politics is something that a lot of us just don't want to talk about, right? Whether it's a similar experience that I had growing up of we just don't talk about it because no good will come from it, or we don't talk about it because we don't feel like we have enough information to talk about it intelligently, or I just don't even want to go there because I'm going to alienate people, right? And so I really imagine that there's a lot of you out there that have had that same experience. And I want to have you continue listening to talk about how we're going to talk about it, right? Because this is a conversation that I feel like is so relevant to us as women. And I really believe that adding a collective voice to what we are seeing and experiencing right now is so, so important. So I want you to stay with me because, again, we're really talking about this idea of movie-inspired episodes. So let me tie it all together because it feels like I've gone in 18 different directions. So what I want to start with is that for me, especially these last, I would say, year or so in the political climate, what I've realized is that by staying silent and not letting my opinions be heard or seen, that I'm actually handing my power away, right? I'm devastated by what's happening right now. I'm scared. I'm worried. I'm overwhelmed by it all. And I'm well aware, and I have become even more painfully aware, even in the last 24 hours, of the great privilege that I have simply based on the color of my skin and the soil I was born on. And there's nothing simple about it, right? That this is a privilege that I have been afforded, and it's not one that I think at times I've been comfortable with, but I know for me that I need to get comfortable talking about that privilege because otherwise I'm actually having the reverse happen in my life. And so this question that I've really been wrestling with is how do I use that privilege in a way that adds more voice, more action, more energy to resisting what is happening right in front of, especially when I don't agree with it, right? And the answer that I've come up with is that I need to be the heroine of my own story. That when I stay silent, I'm expecting somebody else, something else, someone else to fight the battle for me. I'm handing over my power, my voice, my passion, my drive in hopes that someone else will take care of it for me. And honestly, that is the most blatant use of privilege I've ever seen. And I'm the one doing it, right? Like I'm the one that's doing it by saying, you know what, this affects me, but not here, here, and here, so I'll just stay silent. And the crazy thing is that although I have explored my privilege in 8,000 different ways, I've never seen it through the lens that I'm seeing it right now in this moment. And I honestly think that I know there was a time in my life where I thought that, staying quiet was actually helping the problem. I wasn't making it worse, right? I was staying small and making it easier for others to resolve the issue. We think of that idea of not having too many cooks in the kitchen, and that by stepping back and letting people resolve whatever, toxic things are happening in the world, I'm actually helping because I'm not getting in the mix and muddying it up. And actually that's the exact opposite. By keeping my voice silent and sitting back in that privilege, I've actually been exploiting my privilege, right? I've been benefiting it in a way that has been so blind. And for me, that's really, really humbling to say, especially across the very diverse and very passionate listening audience that I have, right? And so I'm going to be vulnerable and own it, right? I'm going to be vulnerable and own that that has been a reality. And I've tried my hardest to look at it through every single lens throughout my life. And now in this moment, I'm having an even deeper insight, awareness into what it looks like to be able to stay silent and to not be the heroine of my own story. And so for those of you that have seen the movie Moana, I was actually just talking with a friend about it literally moments before I started recording this. And that movie to me is absolutely beautiful. And I'm not going to give the movie away for those of you who haven't seen it, but it's absolutely beautiful because it speaks to women so much, and it speaks to generations of women, right? The mother, daughter, grandmother, those generations, and really recognizing that as each generation, especially as women go forward, that there is this messaging that we get about what is right and what is wrong, where we are limited and where we are unlimited, where we are powerful and where we are powerless. And I feel like the movie does this just beautiful, beautiful job of being able to really highlight those generations and the messages that we have gotten from those that have gone before us. And that in order for us to have change happen, whether it's within our home, whether it's within our front porch, or whether it's out in this big giant world, that we have to own the power of being the heroine of our own stories, right? Because the problem is that when I have stayed small, right? When I've allowed others before me or others around me to work in that place of movement, of action, of resistance, of voice, that I haven't been the heroine of my own story. And I get to define what that story is, right? For me. And right now in this political climate and just seeing the devastation around me and these executive orders that I feel like are just tearing us apart at the seams, that is my story, right? That's my legacy. Not only am I having this happen right now in my life, right? But I have a daughter that I'm raising, a brand new 5-year-old daughter. And I'm recognizing that for her as a woman, if I'm not the heroine of my own story, then I'm preventing her from being the heroine of hers, right? There's nothing that's more impactful in this world than modeling, right? The way that we show up in the world is how we have the most tremendous impact to those around us. It doesn't matter if I talk about eating foods that make our body strong and drinking enough water and to not get sick and those sorts of things, that if I'm talking about that all the time and yet all I'm doing is drinking soda and eating French fries, screw it. Like, it doesn't matter what my kids hear. It matters what my kids see. And that is true not only as parents, but as partners, as colleagues, as sisters, as women, as daughters, that the way that we show up in the world and the way that we live our life, it has to be the heroine of our own story, because if it's not, then we're impacting the generations after us and after them and after them and after them. And that to me isn't a place I can stay silent anymore. I think about this idea that putting others first it's a sentiment I believe. I really do believe that you should put others first. It's just part of who I am. It's one of my values. And yet by putting others first, I actually have to step in my power and own my voice and own the privileges that have been afforded to me to be even more involved, even more present, even more seen, because that's actually how I'm putting others first. And it's this crazy kind of almost like contradictory, inconsistent message, right? That the more that I own my power and own my voice and step into that I actually am helping by putting others first. But if you stop and think about it for a minute, you realize that that's actually what's happening. And so thinking about this idea of, doing the exact opposite of what I think I've done, especially when it comes to talking politics, is that I was handing over my power, right? And so what I want to do first and primary is I want to apologize to all of those of you who have been fighting the good fight, and for those of you that I've only supported with my thoughts and intentions. You are warriors who have been in the trenches, and I've been sitting on the sidelines, and I'm sorry for that. Because you, as my sister, my friend, my fellow human, I should have been there, right? I let you down. And for that, I am so sorry. And the second part of it is that I need to give myself some grace, right? I need to give myself some grace for doing the best that I knew how, right? I can own that being silent wasn't malicious or intentional. It was ill-informed, right? It was a product of what I thought was the best way to handle it, right? Like, how do I, somebody who has privilege, move into circles with people that don't have the same privileges that are afforded to me and not offend because I want my voice to be strong as theirs? No, right? Like, that's absolutely ill-informed. By staying silent, I'm actually exploiting. I'm sitting back in a place and just resting on it, right? Rather than saying, no, I need to use it as a way to join the fight. And so I didn't realize that I wasn't being the heroine of my own story. And I didn't realize that I wasn't being the heroine of our story, right? Our collective story as women. And honestly, now that I see it more clearly, I can proceed much more intentionally and also open to what stepping into the light will bring. Anytime we make ourselves bigger, we risk more. And I'm well aware that by putting this podcast in the world right now, I'm making myself a little bit bigger. And honestly, it's terrifying. It's scary, right? Because I don't know what that will look like for me, but in this moment and forever moving forward, I'm choosing to be big enough to figure it out. And lastly, what I want to do is I want to create a call to all of you out there. Women, sisters, friends, daughters, mothers, aunts, cousins. I want to create a call to you out there who may have had a similar story to me, where you thought you were helping by not being in the mix. You thought you were making it easier to solve the problem by not getting involved and adding too many cooks to the kitchen, right? All of you out there that have a similar experience, and not similar experience of it looked exactly like mine, but that similar feeling of that by getting involved, I might make it worse. Or by getting involved, people may not like me. Or by getting involved, I may offend people, right? That I want you to explore how you're going to become the heroine of your own story. And what's amazing about this is you get to define your story, right? Whether it's happening, again, inside your home, outside your front porch, within the streets of your community, or in this larger world. How do you become the heroine of your own story? And what is happening in the world right now around you that you can no longer stay silent about? Like, I want you to identify with that. What is something that is so bursting forth from you that you can't sit in silence anymore? And really recognize that that's a choice. And to me, when I hear that something that I'm no longer comfortable with, that I thought was the status quo, is a choice, there's a part of me that gets really scared, right? Because I'm like, oh, no, that's not a choice. It's the way that I have to do it. Right? I sit back in this place, and that's not true. It is a choice. And so I want to empower every single one of you guys to talk about, to identify, to see, to open your eyes to what's happening in our world around us right now, to our sisters, to our friends, to our daughters, to our mothers, to our aunts, to our cousins. And what can you no longer stay silent about? Because I want to encourage you to be the heroine of your own story. It's going to be a scary journey, my friends. And yet, the more of us that are doing it together, the more of us that are banding and saying, no, this doesn't work for me. This doesn't work for my heart, for my body, for my soul. The decisions that are being made at an executive level do not work for me, and my voice needs to be heard, that it's not so scary when we're doing it together. So that is the place that I want to leave you with. And I so am open to your guys' feedback. I'm a little terrified saying, let me know, let me hear you. But I also recognizing that that is part of the growing pains that I am going to by looking at this through a different lens. And I think a lens that I've gotten glimpses of at times and that I've explored deeply and have used it as, my passion for the work that I do. But today in this moment, I'm feeling it even deeper. And so anytime that our awareness deepens, we kind of do that, like that tower of terror, like elevator drop of like, oh crap, I just went to a deeper level. It's all so much more clear because I got a deeper view of it. And now I need to move with it. I can't sit with it anymore. So I encourage you to reach out, send your feedback via the SpeakPipe app. You can always send in your audio feedback. I love to hear your voices, especially with this podcast. This is our collective voice. And I also want to be able to write it in, right? If it doesn't feel comfortable sharing your voice, share your words. Your words are powerful. You've got to start somewhere when you're the heroine of your own story. So you're always welcome to send your feedback into Anna@herlifeunscripted.com. And yeah, thank you guys for this time today. Even just having this conversation, I can feel the weight lifting, the weight of fear lifting, and also the feeling of anxiety increase a little bit, right? Of having this out in the world. But you know what? I need it to be out in the world because it's where I'm at. And I know that there's so many of you that are out there too. So if this episode helped in any way for you to be able to shift over to recognizing that you need to be the heroine of your own story and that we need to be the heroines of our story, then absolutely the risk was worth it. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for you listening and for tuning in today. I am so grateful to be connected with you and for letting you let me into your world and into your hearts. It is truly, truly an honor. I look forward to talking to you all soon. Bye, guys.
Want to learn about the latest retreats, workshops, and speaking events hosted by Anna? Head over to herlifeunscripted.com to get in on all the juicy details. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast so we can continue to grow our amazing audience. Lastly, be sure and send in your voice feedback via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna at herlifeunscripted.com. We can't wait to hear from you.